This has been a trip that has been many years in the making. I'm very thrilled that this was able to happen. I'm glad that you guys were the first group to make it happen. Well, you didn't do anything, but that's all right, you know. But it was good that you could be the first ones to kind of experience it. I want to introduce our guest speaker here today. Gentleman next to me, Dart Adams, is an incredible force in hip hop journalism and in Boston historianism. One of the things that the last two kind of films that he's been in terms of being a talking head, has been Murder in Boston, which was something put out by HBO Max about the Charles Stewart murder, which is something you all should know about if you live around here. And also May the Lord Watch, which is a wonderful, wonderful documentary, incredibly warmly made, about Little Brother, which is one of my favorite groups out of North Carolina. So he's been in both of those. Fact checker extraordinaire. People nationally come to him to kind of get things right about their books. I can't tell you how many fact checking missions he's been on professionally and just on his own time. If you ever want to learn when anything was released, he's the man to tell you. Until he left Twitter, he was a great Twitter follow, but that's all right. I understand why you left. Yeah. You know, in terms of that, but also a good follow on Instagram as well, so you can kind of learn this stuff. So what I've asked him to do, which he did last year for my classes, was to kind of give a talk to you guys about the history of the Boston scene. One thing that I have not taught you guys is really a lot of the Boston stuff. We mentioned Arthur Baker, if you remember, when we talked about Planet Rock a little bit. But for the most part, we've had the New York narrative in the classroom. What this gentleman is here to do is to kind of fill in the Boston gap, because often this city gets a bad reputation for being a hub of hip hop. Some of that is deserved and some of that is not deserved. So those are the kinds of things that we hope that you'll listen to, be interactive with them, ask questions, be interested, be curious, you know, all that kind of good stuff. So I turn it over to Dart. Let's make him feel welcome.
Hi, you've been told my name is Dart Adams. Born and raised in Boston, grew up in the South End, Lower Roxbury neighborhood. One of the reasons why people have no idea about Boston's hip hop history is because people have this odd idea of what Boston is due to its image. The image of Boston is pocket cod, Harvard, it's mass holes screaming, talking about Dunkins and being angry at each other if you look on social media. That was the polar opposite of my experience growing up in Boston throughout my entire life. I grew up in a neighborhood that was blacks, Latinos, Asian kids, mostly Chinese, because Chinatown was very close in proximity, and some of the population bled over because there wasn't enough space in Chinatown. All of the kids played together. Miss Johnson, Miss Lopez, Miss Chan, all looked out for everybody, all the kids in the neighborhood. And we were very into music, extremely into music, because Boston is a music city. It used to be a jazz mecca. My neighborhood, the South End, Lower Roxbury, going down Mass Ave, Columbus, Tremont, back in the 40s and 50s was actually where all the jazz clubs, all the jazz venues were located. And if you go back and look at the seminal jazz recordings from the 40s and 50s, a lot of them were recorded right there in Boston. Prominent Harlem musicians left Harlem and came to Boston. So there's all this black and Latino culture that was centralized in my neighborhood. So I had a sense of pride about that growing up. I was always told about it. Now, when you think about Boston, the polar opposite of this image is anything having to do with any brown people. That's why people don't know about its hip hop history. Now, you talked about Arthur Baker. In the early days of hip hop, we're talking about disco, right? So coming out of disco, I'm sure we've talked about it. You had the disco records, the 12 inches, the extended mixes, and all the other stuff. Two of the first people to do that were a guy named Arthur Moulton. So TJM, Tom Moulton. Tom Moulton had a protege. His protege was Arthur Baker. He also had a friend, and his friend was named, so he had another friend. And either way, these guys were the first people to really do the remixing. They extended breaks and did all this other stuff, so they made like disco records important. Now, if you know anything about hip hop, they pretty much just started with breaks and disco records. And a lot of those records were coming out of Boston. Whether we're talking about Big Beat by Billy Squier, whether we're talking about Boston, whether we're talking about Aerosmith, their Toys in the Attic record, which Run DMC scratched a lot. We're talking about Jay Giles' band, who had a lot of breaks because they did a lot of live records. So Boston always contributed to hip hop. The early producers, Arthur Baker, his boys, Michael Johnson, Maurice Starr, his other boy who actually came from Roxbury too, who had solid platinum recordings. So growing up as a kid, I was very used to hip hop and rap coming up because New York is only 220 miles away. So you had cousins, you had families that would send you tapes. They would send you care packages. Before the first rap record made it on the radio, which was the B-side of the song by the Fatback Band, You're My Candy Sweet, it was called Personality Job. That dropped and it kind of spread on Boston Airwaves, WILD, WRBB, WERS, maybe 45 years ago this month. So like May 1979. I was a child immersed in this. I saw when the first rap records came out. I heard the first rap records. I saw when people went to Skippy White's, when people went to Strawberries to buy rap records. Nubian Oceans and what was then Dudley Square, now Nubian Square. So I had this front row seat as a child to seeing rap take hold with the younger generation. Now, if you've grown up recently, then for you, it's always been a thing. Hip hop and rap has always been a thing. We had a thing where it was our parents' records. It was our parents' music. Then there was the music we listened to. It was the music we liked. And it was a culture that nobody really understood. Why are these kids going to the floor when records come on? Why are they getting their clothes dirty? Why are these kids going crazy because of this dude rapping on this record that came out 6 months ago, and they're just rapping over it? We don't understand what this is. This is a fad that's gonna die. And we're standing in 2024, 45 years after the first rap record came out, and it's the prominent youth culture, and it's a multi-billion dollar industry globally. That's why we're standing in the hip hop archive in Harvard University. I used to go to a school called Boston Latin School. Boston Latin School was founded in 1635. It's the oldest school in America. Harvard College was founded in 1636 as a place to send people who graduated from Boston Latin School. I used to attend this school back in 1997 and 98, and I used to walk up and down this campus, and this Harvard Square didn't look like this. This building right here. Like, this building was here in 1975, but we did not visit it. This wasn't here. So when you think about all of Boston's contributions to hip hop, like we were just in the archive and I was showing your teacher that there's this record there, BMOC, Big Man on Campus, Harvard guys, Play That Funk on Sire Records, which is the same record label that Ice-T was on. They had a show called the Street Beat Show that they started back in 1987 because there was another show at MIT called Lecco's Limo. And what they would do is they would play demos, they would play rap records, and everybody in Massachusetts was starving to be heard. So when they heard that they were playing demos and they were playing rap records on Lecco's Limo on MIT's campus, kids were so excited that they came from all over Massachusetts, drove down, hopped on the train, and came down and descended upon MIT's campus. Now, as you can imagine, the people at MIT were not too enthused to see brown kids from all over Massachusetts showing up at this prestigious university, huddled in this tiny radio station. Well, the entire hip hop community galvanized around that tiny space at MIT's campus. And there were guys at Harvard that, like, one was from Philly, one was from DC. John Schechter, Dave Mays. And they were like, we need something like that. We need a rap radio show at Harvard. People laughed at them. They didn't care. They went on WHRB, they said, we need a DJ that's ironclad, that's solid, that everybody in the city respects. So they went to Almighty RSO, went to their DJ, his name is Jeff 2 times now, back then he was DJ Def Jeff, and they asked him, could you be our DJ? He said, hell yeah. So he came to Harvard, to their campus. I've been to that radio station several times, walked down that dark street, going down those stairs. And they established the Street Beat radio show. Why is that important? Because at a Street Beat radio show, they realized, hey, nobody knows when records come out. Nobody knows who's selling what. If we could get people to go to Spin City, if we could get them to go to Skippy White's, if we could get them to go to Nubian Ocean and know when rap records are coming out, or when shows are in Massachusetts, because it was very hard to get shows in Boston due to a lot of issues, read racism. People were scared to have, rap shows at certain venues. So rap shows would have to be at rock venues or punk venues at the time.
So they were like, we need to have a piece of paper that tells you when all these albums are coming out, when all these singles are coming out, when people are doing shows. And so they created this leaflet, this yellow leaflet called The Source. They printed one in summer 1988, they printed another one in fall 1988, and then they started doing a full magazine in 1989. And now The Source magazine is known as the Bible of hip hop, and it started from a dorm room on Harvard's campus. So when people talk about Boston and its contributions to hip hop, it's very clear they weren't here, they don't know anything about Boston's history. I lived it, I saw it. I held that very first leaflet when I was sitting at Skippy White's at 410 Mass Ave, which was at one point one of Malcolm X's hangouts, a jazz lounge, and now it's my barbershop. So there's all this Black history, Latino history, and culture that's alive and well in Boston, thriving in Boston, and very few people know about it. And that, again, I have to stress, is why people never talk about Boston's hip hop history or are shocked by it. So I have had to write so many pieces for NPR, Boston Magazine, Boston Globe, about Boston and its hip hop history. I turned 49 in August, right? Hip hop culture, last year they celebrated being 50 years. It's 50 years old. The first rap records came out 45 years ago. So for all of you, this is something that you've experienced your entire lives. For me, I got to see it start. There was a time when they didn't play rap on the radio when the sun was up. Okay? They had to wait for the sun to go down before they were going to play a rap record. A rap record had to be super popular for them to play it more than 3 times a day. The most that they did was they would play a song every hour on the hour, so people didn't call in and request it. So at the top of every hour they would play it. Rapper's Delight, WRBB, WERS. They would be like, all right, you don't have to call us for Rapper's Delight. You're gonna hear it at 12, you're gonna hear it at 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't ask. We're gonna play it. And then sometimes it would get so crazy that somebody else would come on to start a new shift, and they would play it again just so nobody asked them. That was the first rap song that crossed over. That was the first rap song that hit the pop charts. And the other real hard part about rap history and rap culture and all this other stuff is that rap, when it started out, was an independent record label based art form, and also was single based. So that means when Rapper's Delight came out, people didn't get RIAA certified. They were bootlegging their own records to make more money off of them. Rapper's Delight should be the very first rap single with an RIAA gold, platinum, double platinum, diamond certification. It has none of them.
It's not even gold?
Technically, no.
Wow.
Because I could pull up old issues of Billboard, Cashbox, Radio and Record, Black Radio Exclusive, and I could show you the charts. And it's like, they were moving so many copies of Rapper's Delight back in late 1979 through early 1980 that they would get the shipment in the door, they would open it up, and they would just sell it to people. They wouldn't even go to the register. They just give me the money, give me the money, give me the money. And then they just take the stack of money and hand it to the woman at the register. That's how many records they were selling of this record. And it never got gold certified, platinum certified. To give you an idea how underground this was and how much of a phenomenon this was. And people thought it was gonna die. They thought it was gonna die in 81. They thought it was gonna die in 82 until Planet Rock comes out and then some big records come out. And then in 1983, the first rap movies are made. Wild Style and Style Wars, which Hollywood bites in 1984 to make Breakin', Beat Street, Body Rock, you name it. TV shows like The Pilot, TV shows like Graffiti Rock. Graffiti Rock aired in June 29th, 1984. The end of school. Everybody saw it. They aired it 3 more times over the summer. Had insane ratings. The studio didn't pull the trigger and didn't make it a series. And if you watch that pilot, you're just like, how did they not see what this was going to become? And that's when hip hop explodes. That's when old men go to classes to learn how to backspin and then start going to the floor and doing the backspin to Danger Zone, or like songs from Footloose, which makes no sense if you know anything about hip hop. You dance to the record, you know, the musicality. So also when I was growing up, something I didn't mention, rap wasn't all hip hop boys. There was graph, there was b-boying, there was the DJ culture, there was all this other stuff. So the prominent b-boy crew was right in my neighborhood. They were called the Floor Lords. I lived in South End Lower Roxbury, as I mentioned. There was a school called the Blackstone in Via Victoria, which was a community that was made to house the overwhelming Latino population, mostly Puerto Ricans, some Dominicans. And they had to fight to get this parcel opened up and so they could build affordable housing on it. It's been renovated several times over. It's been there since the late 60s, early 70s. So I would go to the Blackstone School and I would practice with the Floor Lords. They started in 1981. So we're talking me being in first grade practicing with the Floor Lords. Now, 2 Floor Lords are gonna be on the Olympic team that performs in 2024 in Paris. We just came out of that room. There's a Saucony sneaker that's dedicated to the Floor Lords because Adidas kept sleeping. I kept telling Adidas, you need to sponsor the Floor Lords. The Floor Lords have been rocking Adidas since 1981. I was there. They slept. Saucony, who's also a local company, was like, fine, we'll sponsor the Floor Lords, we'll give them their own sneaker. And it is preserved in that archive in here. So for me to be here, it's special because, again, I was a student here. I've come here several times, whether somebody's been a Nasir Jones Fellow and invited me to see their colloquium, or somebody's doing a presentation. I've been here so many times over the years, and this is the first time I've ever spoken to a class here. I've done it several times a day. You could go online and you could find Channel 5 for the 50th anniversary of hip hop. I broke down like all these eras of hip hop in that room. But yeah, when Prodigy was here, I was here. Erica Alexander came to talk about like representation in hip hop. I was here. When the Mad Twins, who are 2 twins who do graffiti and also do animation from Cambridge, who also work here at Harvard, came here to show off their, they called me, I was here. I was here just a couple of months ago for my boy. I was here just a couple of months ago for my boy who's a b-boy, who's talking about his book that I helped him with. So for me to be speaking here about hip hop culture and what it means and Boston's role in it, it means a lot for me to do it here at Harvard, which is the most prestigious college and or university institute of higher learning in the nation. MIT might have something to say about it not too far away, but we know what the truth is. So does anybody have any questions about Boston hip hop history, Massachusetts, our role in it, anything?
I got one just to start us off. The question that I know students of mine who are trying to come up in the music business talk about is the frustration that they find in trying to make it here.
Okay.
We all know the story about Guru and Primo leaving to go to New York and all that kind of stuff. The question remains is like, what are the things that you've seen historically get in the way, and what are the things historically that they may have missed to kind of see the jewel that they could have been here, like, you know, in terms of that?
Back in the days, the big issue was that there were no record labels. There was no record label support here. Even though every record label, major record label, always sent scouts to Boston to poach talent and take it to New York or LA. I've seen that since the talent show circuit days. There was a group called 9.9, used to be called Ouch. These 3 girls from Madison Park High. People came to the talent show circuit, saw them at venues, snatched them, took them to sing background for Patti LaBelle and sing on their records. I saw it firsthand. All the Boston Funk All-Stars that played on everybody's records, produced everybody's records, they got snatched to LA, New York, Philadelphia to record for everybody's records. Now, some of the things were rap. You have guys like MC Spice, who was the first rapper from Boston to be signed to a major label, right? He was helping people with their records. He was kind of the A&R of the hood. He's the reason why Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch got their deal at Interscope. He's the reason why the Feel the Vibration became the second #1 rap song to hit #1 on the Billboard charts. He wrote that song and produced it. MC Spice, not Mark Wahlberg, okay? So like, that's always been the issue. We don't have enough of a record label, and also people's idea of what Boston is prevented it from Boston blowing up. Because if you got signed to a major, they're like, hey, don't talk about Boston too much on your record. Ed O.G. heard this, he was like, talking about Boston all the time. Matter of fact, I'm gonna talk about it on my first single. That song I Gotta Have It changes everything. Comes out early 1991, blows up, becomes the #1 rap single, and not only that, it becomes a global hit, an international hit. And the problem is that when L.G. had that #1 hit, there was no venue in Boston he could even perform it in. He could perform it in Providence.
Yeah.
He could perform certain little small spots of Cambridge, but there was no venue, not even the Strand Theater in Dorchester at the time, where he could perform that song. So these are all the issues that we've always seen. Like, I can't tell you how many times Tam Tam got signed to a major, and they had her looking like wearing spandex with a Madonna mic and having her do the Running Man because they were afraid to have her like really rap. Boston has had so many issues in terms of people don't know what Boston is. So we can't, if we have several groups that were signed, they couldn't even be in each other's videos because we want people to love y'all. We want people to like y'all. So don't play up how you're from Boston because nobody really likes Boston. And anybody who's a Celtics fan or sports fan knows that they love when the Celtics lose. Not because they hate the Celtics organizations, because they associate them with Boston, and everybody outside of New England hates Boston. So that was one of the problems that we faced in terms of like being signed to majors and all that stuff. That's why you had to make independent record labels like Brick, like Detonator, you know, like Lifeline was the record that topped, what's their name? Concrete Click made.
Were they on Brick?
Later, like
okay.
KT recorded with them later. But Rick KT, he started his own label back in 98, 99 called K Communications because you had to go to New York. You had to get connections in New York if you wanted to put something out. There were people from Boston who made record labels like Dark, you know, and they put a New York number on there. They went and got a beeper from New York or a phone from New York, and they were right here. They were right here, right here in Cambridge, right here in Boston. I saw them every day. You had to trick people into thinking they were a New York label, but they were really from Boston. So that's one of the big issues.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Well, there are others out there.
Yep.
What would you say was the golden age of Boston hip hop, and where is Boston hip hop now?
That's a tough question. I think the golden age of Boston hip hop, for me personally, being an old, is I'd say it's between 1992 and 1997. And then I think there was another golden age between 1996 and 2004, because that's when the independent scene in Boston blew up between 96 and 2004. You had stores like Biscuit Head, which also became a label, yet Underground Hip Hop, hiphop.com. You had, right now we're in Cambridge. So you had the Western Front, you had the Middle East, you had Harper's Ferry, you had all these different clubs. And then later on, all along Lansdowne Street, there were all these clubs where people used to perform. The Playhouse, which no longer exists. All these places where people could go and perform and do shows. You had DJs. This is where Deep Static Selector, Master Millions, and G-Spin, and Chubby Chub, and like everybody was at every single club. And you had all these independent record labels, and you had compilations coming out from New York, putting artists from Massachusetts on. And they recognized, oh, this place is a hip hop and independent hip hop mecca. So people were leaving Philadelphia, they were leaving Massachusetts, they were leaving New Jersey, Connecticut to come be in Boston. Like I could list so many independent artists. A$AP Rock, first time I heard A$AP Rock was when he was a BU student. High and Mighty, they were BU students. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, first time I heard A$AP Rock demo was on a mini disc.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was a BU student. There were so many folks that like were coming here when so Lord Have Mercy, who was from Flip Mode Squad, when he lost his deal, he ended up in Massachusetts. He ended up in Boston. MF Doom, when he was having trouble in New York, he came to Boston, recorded with Brick Records. He got locked up for mistaken identity and ended up leaving, going to Georgia. But everybody has their Boston and their Massachusetts stint. But I think like the first golden era was definitely 92 to 97 when New York and LA were coming to Boston and signing everybody. But then nothing really stuck. And then I think 96 to 2004 when the independent hip hop scene blew up and everybody was coming to Boston because they recognized it's a college town and there's people from all over and there's a lot of talent here and they really wanted to see it thrive. They want to be a part of the scene.
If you don't mind, and I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, Sadiq. This is one of my former students, Sadiq Ervin, and I know that he's been managing, I forget.
I know this name.
You do?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I manage Key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, hi everybody, my name's Sadiq.
You can talk about the scene now.
I graduated from North 2015, then went to DC class 2019. Now I've done a lot of events work and stuff in the entertainment industry. Currently, I work at Live Nation Ervin, so I help market a lot of festivals and tours. You've probably seen Roots Picnic, Broccoli City, Sexy Red Touring, BT stuff, whatever. Like there's tons of stuff I'm a part of. But yeah, the scene now, I mean, I feel like we're very blessed because we have a lot of people who started, they didn't have a lot of resources and they didn't know what was going on, but they found their way, and people like Dart are willing not only to document it and, you know, speak truth to it, but also offer insight and guidance. So you have the Cousin Stizzes, who I consider an OG, but then you have the newer groups who are like the Van Buren Records. You have Key, who's the artist I manage. She's headlining one of the stages at Boston Calling this year. There's the Clark D's, there's the Bori Rocks. Like there's a whole bunch of different artists, R&B artists, you name it, it's represented somewhere. It's just that a lot of those artists don't operate in traditional venues, so they kind of get their start doing parties and other things and some of the bars and stuff that have closed down now. And then because Boston is a little bit of a tough market, you do have to move around because this is very small. I would say it's kind of like in Atlanta, but not really, just in scope. Like if you think of the size, everybody runs into each other at some point. You've been on enough of the stages. Some people are like, okay, how do I become more popular than this my city? And you have to step out. Like some people might branch out to Massachusetts. You do pop out for a couple shows in New York. You get a little bit of a name because you need to be seen. And the reality of the situation is, like Dart was saying, there's not a lot of industry here. There are a lot of players here who then jump out to other places because we have a lot of talent. But it's not like in Atlanta where you can go and you see like a Patchwork Studios or an Stankonia Studios like established by Outkast. Like we haven't seen a major artist from Boston come back and create those spaces to incubate new talent and really help them and put them on. But yeah, it exists, it's here.
Do you feel like that is what needs to happen, is that established artists need to come back and kind of create spaces like that?
Absolutely. I think even just being in conversation with people, like, I mean, she did the No Label Academy. I think No Label's dope. You guys are familiar with Harvard. They started in 2019. The first person they brought back to like speak to students was Travis Scott. And then they did a slew of people from there. Those are the founding members, are like my homies. So they do some really cool stuff, but just making that information accessible, you know, because some people feel like, dang, I'm so out of touch, I'm not near any of these people. Take a bus to New York, take a trip to Atlanta. You can run into anybody. Like my friends have taken dozens of sessions with anybody you could think of. And it's very accessible. It's just that a lot of people don't know about it here because it's not here. But yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, one of the wild things is that going back to the early days of hip hop here, it's like if you had to get the word out, or do something, to shop demos, what have you, people back in the days of the Fung Wah bus, guys would go to Chinatown and they would hop on the Fung Wah, take it to New York, take it wherever, and then take it right back. And this is like the 90s back in the day.
Took your life in your hands on that bus.
I can't tell you how many times my brother went to shop demos and he had beats, and the bus was on fire. And they had to wait for another bus to pick them up.
The bus was $10 to go to New York.
Back and forth.
Like just to give you an example of a more recent example of that, like so there's a DJ, her name's DJ Nyla Simone. She's like the up and coming person that's on the Breakfast Club, and she threw a show at Cafe Arzuli in Brooklyn, and you know she had like what's her name, Connie Diamonds and Maya Dawn, and Key opened as well. But that's an opportunity we got just submitting, and she was cool with it. She loved the music and invited us out. We go out there, we run into mad other people we know and execs and people, and next thing you know, you're at a label meeting. But it's really, it happens that quickly. You just have to be in proximity to the right people.
So imagine me being an old dude and talking to Stiz and going back and forth with his manager. So he told me that the reason why they didn't go through traditional means is because he felt with the way the Boston rap scene was set up, you go to the Middle East, you go to the Western Front, and then you have to fall into the acrobatic, 7L and esoteric, Mr. Lift, terminology, easy money mold. And he was like, we don't fit that. Stiz doesn't fit that. Michael Christmas doesn't fit that. OG Swagger Dick doesn't fit that. So we're never gonna progress through there. I was like, how do you know if you don't do it? Because there've been a lot of different acts that have come up through the Boston scene
And I was like, do you think when 7L and Esoteric rolled up to the scene where you had Almighty RSO and the entire all these dudes from Dorchester and Roxbury in there, and they're rapping, doing backpack rap, that they were immediately accepted? It was like they had to carve out their own space. He was like, I don't think that that's how it works. So we would go back and forth with this debate. In the end, I admitted that he was right, because they had to create third spaces like Bodega. They had to create third spaces at Laced. They had to go to places like AOL. You know, they had to go to Concepts, the concept store that was here, and then there's another one on Mass Ave. And they would use these places as third spaces to have events, have people meet, go to the 47th store when it was in Newbury Street. I was around for all that. So I was the older dude talking to all these younger people about, you know, how the rap scenes changed and how everything has switched. And one thing that I had to understand is that I didn't want to be the angry old person that was telling us that rap was noise and this was garbage and y'all stealing, sampling and stealing. You guys don't know anything about music. This isn't real music. I didn't want to be that angry old person who I hated when I was coming up in the rap scene. So I instead listened, because here's the thing. The music that's being made now are being made for y'all, not for me.
That's right.
Okay? So I'm turning 49. So I think about like 1994. Would a 49-year-old back in 1994, would they really have an appreciation for Nas's Illmatic, which is probably the easiest, most accessible rap album for an old person, with all the jazz and all the lyricism? They probably would still think it was an aberration, you know? So I use that thought process when I talk to younger people about rap, because what I like and what I came up with isn't what's prominent now, but why would I expect it to? You know? And everything goes in cycles. When I was coming up as a kid, rap was single based, then it became album based. And then you had a side A and side B of tapes, so you had to worry about your sequencing. When you're dealing with just one song, that doesn't matter. When you're streaming, it doesn't matter. All that goes out the window. And what you hear and what you appreciate, because music, at the end of the day, has an emotional connection to you. You have to have an emotional reaction to it. So if I play something from 1997 that gave me an emotional reaction back when I was 22, I don't expect it to hit you the same way. A record that I heard back in 1989 when I was 14, if I play it for a 14-year-old today, if I expect them to have the same reaction, I'm an idiot. And that's the one thing that we always have to keep in mind when we talk about hip hop, when we talk about rap, when we talk about music in general. Everything isn't made for everybody, but you have to keep an open mind and you have to listen, you know? Because if the next generation, if you, I don't want to hear you no more. Now I'm that angry old man, and now I'm shut out. Now I can't help direct this generation. And I did it to myself.
Right.
Okay? It's my fault. It's not, oh, I don't like what these young kids are doing. Shut up. Because the elder back in the days didn't like what y'all were listening to, what y'all were making. And you're making the same mistake they made. So, anybody else have any questions?
Anything else here? Okay. So listen, you know, we're actually kind of on schedule with what we were kind of going to do anyway, so this is wonderful. First of all, I just want to thank you, Mr. Dard Adams, so let's give him a little round of applause. I'm very glad I was able to get one former student to come here, Sadiq. Let's give Sadiq a little bit of a hand. You're going to be on her panel tomorrow, Courtney Leonard, otherwise known as Courtney Boston.
Oh, yeah.
So she's a former student of mine too. Yeah, I was trying to get her to come through today.
We were actually in a documentary together about Belle Biv DeVoe.
The Belle Biv
DeVoe at Fenway Park.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, you know, a lot of these groups that you heard, guys, with me just for a hot second. A lot of these groups that you heard from Boston, I know they might be unfamiliar to you. I encourage you to look them up. You know, Almighty RSO was such a gigantic force for Boston in the 90s. Concrete Click was important. Mr. Liff, I actually coached against his father in soccer, which was kind of fun. Wow. Yeah, and then, so, you know, all these people you are part of this lineage. And, you know, again, this is how we're going to go on from this moment forward. It is now 12:15.